What if I told you that the very act of waiting is the reason your desires stay out of reach? We've been trained to believe that faith means hoping, begging, and watching for signs. But Neville Goddard's teachings shatter that illusion. Real faith doesn't wait for proof. It acts as if already done. Think about it. How many times have you prayed for change, only to look around and feel disappointed that nothing shifted? That cycle of waiting is doubt in disguise. And as long as you're waiting, you're silently affirming, "I don't have it yet." The truth is, the outer world doesn't create your reality. Your assumption does. In this video, you'll discover why faith needs no proof, how to stop checking the 3D world for confirmation, and how to step into the power of assumption with simple, practical steps. By the end, you'll see that manifestation isn't about hoping for the future. It's about living in the end, right now. So if you're tired of waiting for life to change, this message may completely flip your perspective. Because once you grasp this, you'll never look at faith or your reality the same way again. Most people were raised to only trust what they can see with their eyes and touch with their hands. "I'll believe it when I see it," they say, without realizing that this phrase is really a silent prayer of doubt. Neville Goddard teachings remind us that real faith needs no proof. Proof comes later, never first. Waiting for evidence is denying your own creative power. Think about it. When someone says, "I'll believe once I get the promotion," they're already confessing they don't believe. It's like a prisoner waiting for someone else to unlock the door, not knowing the key is already in their pocket. The law of assumption is simple. The outer world only reflects the inner world. Imagination creates reality, not the other way around. Neville taught that faith is being. It's not fragile hope or a shaky waiting room. It's a position you assume inside yourself without hesitation. To demand signs before assuming the wish fulfilled is like asking a seed to bloom before planting it. That's not how creation works. The power of assumption works by conviction, not conditions. Picture someone longing for love yet constantly checking their phone to see if a message arrived. Each moment of waiting only reinforces the state of not chosen. Instead of living in the end, they live in lack. That habit becomes the thief of manifestation. The universe doesn't answer to anxious waiting. It answers to inner being. Real faith doesn't bargain with life. It doesn't say, "Show me first, and then I'll believe." That's hesitation disguised as spirituality. Faith is like walking into a dark room, already certain the light switch is there, even before your hand finds it. The invisible always precedes the visible. That's the core manifestation truth. Many people sabotage themselves thinking they're practicing patience, but they're really postponing their own power. It's like standing in front of a mirror, refusing to smile until the reflection smiles first. Absurd, isn't it? Yet that's exactly what happens when we wait for outer proof before assuming the inner state. Feeling is the secret. If you want wealth, you must feel wealthy before your bank account shows it. If you want healing, you must feel whole before medical tests confirm it. To wait for proof is to deny your role as cause. Neville Goddard teachings repeat it. Creation is finished. The state already exists. You step into it by assumption. Great inventors and visionaries lived this truth intuitively. The Wright brothers believed in flight long before planes filled the sky. Edison felt light long before the bulb existed. Proof was always the last guest at the party. They didn't stop waiting because of arrogance. They stopped waiting because they knew imagination creates reality. If waiting is doubt, then faith is movement. Faith walks, talks, and thinks as if the desire is already true. It doesn't need applause from circumstances. It celebrates itself in the unseen. Those who understand this don't waste time asking for signs. They live from the wish fulfilled, knowing reality must eventually mirror it. So the next time you think, "I'll believe it when it happens," pause. Ask yourself, am I using imagination to create, or am I using it to delay? Stop waiting. Waiting is only doubt wearing a mask. Real faith begins when your senses are quiet, but your conviction shouts. Neville Goddard often repeated a truth that sounds almost too simple. Creation is finished. Every possibility you could ever desire already exists. Nothing new is being made. What changes is the state you occupy. Proof in the outer world doesn't bring your desire into being. It only reveals the state you have already assumed. That's why real faith needs no evidence to start. Imagine reality like a vast library. Every book is already written, every ending already complete. You don't create the book by opening it. You simply choose which story you want to experience. The law of assumption is the act of taking a book off the shelf and saying, "This is my story." When you live in the end, you step into that story as if it's the only one that matters. Many people misunderstand and think manifestation is about forcing something to appear, but Neville Goddard teachings insist it's about recognition, not struggle. You're not making money, love, or health exist. You're aligning yourself with the version of reality where it already does. Conscious creation is remembering, not begging. Think of a radio. All stations are broadcasting right now, but you only hear the one you tune into. You don't create the music. It was always there. In the same way, manifestation truth is simply tuning your inner world to the frequency of your fulfilled desire. When you stop waiting, you start receiving. This idea can be both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it means nothing is truly out of reach. Terrifying because it removes the excuse of waiting for proof. If creation is finished, then the responsibility is yours. Which state will you assume today? The answer shapes everything that follows. The mind often rebels against this. It whispers, "But if it's finished, where is it?" That voice is the ego clinging to proof. Yet proof is only the shadow of assumption. It's like sunlight. You don't wait for the shadow to appear before believing the sun exists. You know the sun is there, and the shadow follows naturally. Neville's students would practice this by assuming small things first. A compliment from a stranger, a phone call from a friend. These little demonstrations weren't proof that creation suddenly began. They were reminders that creation was always complete. They helped train the heart to believe before seeing. In practical terms, this means you no longer pray to something outside, but from the state of already having it. Instead of asking, "Will I ever?" you declare, "It is done." That shift from seeking to being is the essence of spiritual awakening. It's the difference between hoping and knowing. Once you grasp this, you see how empty waiting becomes. Waiting assumes separation. Living in the end assumes union. Real faith is not passive. It's active embodiment of the finished creation. And every time you step into that state, life must rearrange to reflect it. So when you feel the urge to demand signs, remind yourself, nothing new needs to be created. It is already finished. You are simply choosing which ending you'll live. And that choice, the assumption, is far more powerful than any proof could ever be. Every time someone says, "If only I had a sign, then I'd believe," they're unknowingly declaring doubt. To ask for proof is to confess you haven't yet assumed the wish fulfilled. Neville Goddard called this the great trap of seekers, chasing evidence instead of embodying conviction. Real faith doesn't wait for confirmation. It is the confirmation. Think about it like planting a seed. No farmer digs up the soil every hour to check if the sprout has appeared. To do so would show he doesn't trust the process. In the same way, when you demand signs, you're disturbing the soil of your imagination. You're telling the universe, "I don't trust this is real unless you prove it." And that vibration only creates more waiting. Acting from the end, on the other hand, is declaring, "It's already mine." It's moving through the world with a quiet certainty, even when appearances argue otherwise. Imagine someone who desires wealth, but still acts like money is scarce. That contradiction keeps them trapped in lack. Living in the end requires consistency, thoughts, feelings, and actions all flowing from the same conviction. Neville Goddard teachings emphasize this. Assumption is creative, doubt is destructive. When you act as if it's already done, you're telling your subconscious that this is the only reality. The subconscious, being impersonal and obedient, accepts the order and shapes the outer world accordingly. To hesitate or wait for signs is to send mixed signals, and the result is delay. Consider the story of a person who wants a new job. They affirm it, visualize it, but then say, "If I get a call this week, that will be the sign it's working." What they don't realize is that their demand for a sign reveals disbelief. If they truly assumed the end, they wouldn't be looking for signals. They'd already be preparing for the role. Proof would be inevitable, not conditional. Acting from the end doesn't mean faking confidence. It means inhabiting the state so deeply that it feels normal. The one who has already received doesn't beg, doesn't test, doesn't demand. They simply live. That ordinariness is the power of assumption. It's not dramatic, it's natural. Manifestation truth lies in normalcy, not in constant checking. Neville often said that faith needs no proof because faith itself is the proof. To feel love before the partner appears, to feel abundance before the money arrives, to feel healed before the doctor agrees. That is the mark of real faith. Anything else is bargaining with reality, and bargaining is just another mask for doubt. Think of children. When they imagine being a superhero, they don't stop and demand signs. They embody it instantly. They run, they jump, they declare victory. That playful certainty is what manifestation requires. Adults complicate it with questions, but the principle remains. Assume and it's yours. When you demand proof, you delay. When you live in the end, you accelerate. It's that simple. The bridge of incidents will unfold naturally, but your job is to stay faithful to the inner world. The outer will always bow to the inner. It has no choice. That's why Neville's words remain timeless. Stop waiting and start being. So the question is, are you secretly asking for signs, or are you already declaring your desire complete? The answer reveals everything, and it leads us straight into the next subtle trap seekers often fall into. One of the biggest mistakes in manifestation is constantly checking the 3D world for results. People affirm, visualize, or pray, and then immediately look around to see if anything has changed. That impulse may feel natural, but it actually reinforces the state of not yet. Neville Goddard teachings warn, the outer world is only a shadow, not the source. It's like planting a seed and then staring at the ground every hour, expecting to see sprouts. The more you check, the more you doubt. Faith is quiet trust in the unseen. The law of assumption requires that you dwell in the inner world as if the wish fulfilled is already real, instead of begging the outer to confirm it. When someone constantly checks for signs, they're broadcasting uncertainty. Imagine texting someone and then refreshing the screen every 30 seconds to see if they replied. That anxious energy doesn't bring the reply faster, it only drains you. The same principle applies with manifestation. Real faith rests, it doesn't fidget. The 3D world is slow to change because it's the after effect of imagination. To demand it to shift instantly is like yelling at a mirror to change your reflection before you move. Conscious creation doesn't work that way. The reflection always comes last. Imagination creates reality. Outer results are just delayed echoes. Neville often said the outer world is dead until you give it life through assumption. Yet people treat it as a judge, constantly asking, has it worked yet? That habit keeps them stuck in lack. To live in the end is to stop asking and start knowing. Proof follows assumption, never the other way around. Consider someone manifesting money. They imagine abundance at night, but wake up checking their bank balance in the morning, desperate for change. Each check strengthens the belief that it hasn't happened yet. They may not realize it, but their focus is still on emptiness. The power of assumption demands consistency in feeling, not surveillance of circumstances. This is why Neville insisted, ignore appearances. Appearances are old news, the residue of past assumptions. If you take them as truth, you'll only recycle the same reality. Spiritual awakening comes when you stop giving power to shadows and place it back in the inner world. That's where creation truly lives. It takes discipline to resist the urge to check, but the moment you stop, peace enters. And peace itself is an early sign that faith is active. When you no longer need outer confirmation, you know you've shifted states. Ironically, that's when the outer starts changing fastest, because you've stopped choking it with doubt. Think of it like baking bread. Once it's in the oven, you don't keep opening the door every 2 minutes. Doing so ruins the process. You trust the unseen heat is working. Faith works the same way. You set the assumption, then let it rise, without interference. Checking only collapses the process. So the next time you feel tempted to scan your reality for evidence, pause. Ask yourself, am I feeding the state of already done? Or am I strengthening not yet? The answer decides how quickly your world bends. And this naturally leads us to what true faith actually looks like in daily life. True faith is never about straining or forcing yourself to believe. It's about slipping naturally into the state of the wish fulfilled, like putting on a well-fitted coat. Neville Goddard teachings repeat this again and again. Real faith feels normal. When you assume the end, you don't pressure yourself. You accept it as already done. Think of it like an actor stepping into character. They don't just recite lines. They live as the character until it feels natural. In the same way, conscious creation invites you to inhabit the role of the person who already has what they desire. You don't have to make it happen. You simply live as though it already has. Many misunderstand faith as forcing affirmations or endlessly visualizing with clenched fists. But that energy is rooted in doubt, not conviction. Feeling is the secret. Real faith carries ease, a quiet, of course, attitude. You don't walk around announcing it to everyone. You just breathe in the state as your new normal. Consider someone manifesting health. They don't spend the day thinking, "I hope I'm healed." Instead, they move through life calmly, already identifying as a healthy person. Their imagination doesn't struggle, it accepts. That inner acceptance ripples outward, shaping their body and environment. Neville Goddard once said, "To assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to live as though it were true." There's no drama in it. If you assume wealth, you don't obsess over bills, you carry yourself with quiet abundance. If you assume love, you don't chase, you radiate belonging. Faith doesn't plead, it embodies. Think about this. When you buy something online, you don't constantly worry if it's coming. You trust the order is placed and wait calmly for delivery. That's the law of assumption in action. You've chosen, you've accepted, and the outer world has no choice but to catch up. Faith doesn't demand, it rests. This is why true faith often feels boring to the ego. There's no fireworks, no dramatic struggle. It feels ordinary. And that ordinariness is powerful because it means you've truly accepted it as real. Manifestation truth is simple. When it feels normal, it's already yours. So many seekers miss this by trying too hard. They sweat, they strain, they chase results. But forcing is resistance in disguise. Acceptance is the opposite. It's gentle, confident, and steady. When you stop trying to make it happen, you finally allow it to happen. The power of assumption is not about fighting reality, it's about choosing reality. True faith knows the work is done inside. From there, the outer rearranges naturally. No pushing, no proving, just being. The shift is subtle, but life-changing. When you live naturally in the end, you no longer crave confirmation. You've accepted the state so fully that the outer world simply follows. And once you experience this ease, you'll see why persistence, even in contradiction, becomes the next essential step. Neville Goddard often gave his students simple practices to make the invisible feel real. One of his favorites was to create a short, imaginal scene that implied the wish fulfilled. Not a long movie, not an exhausting effort, just a small, vivid moment you could easily replay. Faith doesn't need drama. It thrives on simplicity. Imagine hearing a close friend's voice saying, "Congratulations, I'm so happy for you." You can almost feel the warmth of their embrace, the sparkle in their eyes. That scene, repeated quietly, carries the vibration of completion. The law of assumption works through these imaginal tones, because the subconscious accepts them as fact. Relief is often the most telling sign. When the imaginal act feels real, you sense a deep exhale inside your chest. It's as if the struggle dissolves, and what you longed for is already part of your life. Real faith is always accompanied by this relief, because faith knows the end has already been reached. And yet the beauty lies in the ordinariness. You don't need fireworks or angels descending from the sky. A simple handshake, a smile, a "well done" is enough. Why? Because manifestation truth is not about intensity, but about normalcy. When it feels ordinary, the state has been fully accepted. Think about how you remember past events. You don't need to stretch or force yourself, you just recall the scene naturally. Neville Goddard teaching suggests you treat your future fulfilled state the same way. Remember it before it happens. That's the essence of living in the end. For example, if you desire a new home, imagine walking through the doorway, placing your keys on the counter, and feeling the quiet comfort of belonging. You don't need to construct the entire house in detail. Just that small moment carries the full assumption of the wish fulfilled. This method is so effective because it bypasses the conscious mind. The conscious mind argues, doubts, demands proof, but the subconscious accepts feelings and impressions without question. When you repeatedly hear those congratulations in imagination, the subconscious begins to shape outer events accordingly. Neville often warned not to overcomplicate this. Many seekers try to design long scripts, but the subconscious responds best to short, vivid, and repeatable acts. Just a simple thank you, a hug, or the feeling of relief is enough. Faith is childlike in its simplicity. As you practice, you'll notice a shift. The scene feels less like imagining and more like remembering. That's the turning point, when your inner world has truly accepted it as done. From that moment, the outer world begins its slow but certain adjustment. This exercise becomes the bridge between knowing the principle and living it. Once you taste the power of a simple imaginal scene, you'll also learn why persistence, even when appearances contradict you, becomes the next test of real faith. One of Neville Goddard's boldest teachings is that outer appearances don't matter. The 3D world, as convincing as it looks, is only the after effect of past assumptions. So when reality contradicts your desire, the key is persistence. Real faith doesn't collapse under pressure. It stands firm, knowing the invisible causes the visible. Think of it like steering a ship. When you turn the wheel, the ship doesn't change direction instantly. There's a delay while momentum shifts. If you panic in that delay and turn back, you'll never reach your destination. Manifestation works the same way. Assume the wish fulfilled and persist. Even when the waters look unchanged, the ego loves to scream when appearances disagree. Look, nothing's happening. You're wasting your time. But Neville Goddard teachings remind us that this is the moment faith is tested. Do you collapse back into doubt, or do you remain steady in the inner world? Persistence is the bridge that carries you across contradiction. Persistence doesn't mean force. It means loyalty to your assumption. Imagine someone who wants healing. Even if symptoms linger, they refuse to identify with sickness. They continue to live from the end, choosing to see themselves as whole. That steady identification reshapes the body from the inside out. It's the same with money, love, or success. Outer reality may still echo lack, rejection, or delay. But if you persist inwardly, those appearances must eventually dissolve. Why? Because imagination creates reality, and the inner world always outweighs the outer. The invisible is the seed, the visible is only the fruit. Neville often compared this persistence to faith in the harvest. A farmer doesn't dig up his field just because he doesn't see crops on the first day. He knows the invisible forces are at work beneath the soil. Faith works exactly like that. Stop digging, keep trusting. The harvest comes when you persist. Many people give up at the first sign of contradiction. They pray, they affirm, they visualize, and when reality pushes back, they quit. What they don't realize is that contradiction is not failure. It's proof the shift is underway. Resistance often appears just before the breakthrough. That's why Neville said to persist regardless of appearances. Persistence builds inner authority. Each time you refuse to be swayed by the 3D, you strengthen your identity as the cause. Soon you stop chasing proof altogether, because you know the invisible is more real than what your eyes see. That confidence becomes unshakable. And here's the paradox. The less you care about appearances, the faster they change. When you stop giving power to the outer world, it bends to the inner without resistance. Faith that remains unmoved is magnetic. Life rearranges itself around conviction. So the next time reality mocks you with contradiction, smile. It's just the echo of an old state fading away. Persist. Stay loyal to the end you've assumed. Because once you master persistence, you'll begin to notice subtle signs of faith working inside you. Peace, detachment, and surprising alignments that confirm your state. One of the most overlooked aspects of manifestation is the subtle shift inside you when faith begins to take root. It doesn't always start with money in your hand or love at your door. It begins with something quieter, inner peace. Neville Goddard teachings remind us that when you truly assume the end, anxiety dissolves, the heart finally relaxes. This peace is not passive, it's powerful. It's the calm of someone who knows the outcome is already secured. Think of ordering something online. You don't stress after clicking buy. You go on with your day, confident it's on its way. Real faith feels exactly like that, restful certainty without the need to chase. Detachment is another early sign. You no longer obsess over timing or details. Instead of asking, when will it happen? You move through life as if it already has. This detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means confidence. You stop waiting because deep down, you've already received. Then the outer world starts to play along. You may notice small alignments, a random compliment, a surprising opportunity, an unexpected gift. These are not the cause of your faith, but the reflection of it. Manifestation truth is that life always mirrors the state you hold inside. The signs are echoes, not sources. For example, someone assuming wealth might suddenly get invited to a business meeting or stumble across new financial insights. Someone assuming love might find themselves glowing with new confidence, attracting smiles from strangers. These alignments aren't coincidences, they're confirmations that the inner world has shifted. Neville often said that the first fruits of assumption are always internal. Before the desire materializes, you feel different. The relief, the lightness, the sense of it's done. These are the surest indicators that you're living in the end. If you're still restless or doubting, it's a sign you haven't fully accepted the state. The beauty of these inner signs is that they can't be faked. You can tell yourself affirmations all day, but if peace hasn't arrived, you'll know it's still just effort. When peace comes, it feels effortless. Faith is self-sustaining. It doesn't need constant maintenance. This is where spiritual awakening often begins. You realize that your mood, your focus, and your energy no longer rise and fall with outer appearances. You become steady. You walk lighter. And ironically, that detachment is what speeds up the outer changes because resistance has been removed. So if you ever wonder, is it working? Don't look outside first. Look inward. Has peace arrived? Have you stopped craving proof? Do you feel relief even before results appear? If the answer is yes, then faith is already shaping your world. And once this deeper embodiment sets in, the next natural step is even more powerful. You stop looking for proof entirely. You begin to simply live as the person who already has it. There comes a moment on this journey when faith matures into something effortless. At first, you may still look for signs, waiting for the outer world to reflect your inner assumption. But as Neville Goddard teachings emphasize, deeper embodiment begins when you no longer care about proof. You simply live as the one who already has it. This shift feels like freedom. You're no longer measuring progress by circumstances or obsessing over timelines. Instead, you carry yourself with the quiet dignity of someone complete. The power of assumption has become your new normal. You've crossed the bridge from hoping to being. Imagine someone manifesting love. In the early stages, they might visualize their ideal partner, look for signs, or feel impatient. But once they embody the end, they stop searching. They already feel loved, cherished, and secure. Their behavior, energy, and choices flow from that identity. Love is no longer a pursuit, it's a state of being. It's the same with wealth. The one who embodies abundance doesn't constantly check the bank balance. They think, act, and feel from sufficiency. They trust the flow of money because internally they've already claimed it. Outer numbers are no longer the source of confidence, they are the echo of inner conviction. This is what Neville called living in the end. Not pretending, not forcing, but inhabiting the state until it feels natural. When you embody it deeply, it stops feeling like manifestation practice and starts feeling like life. The wish fulfilled is no longer something you visit in imagination. It's the atmosphere you breathe. The beauty is that outer proof then becomes irrelevant. You don't need it because you already know. And ironically, that's when proof floods in. Opportunities, relationships, and resources arrive with uncanny timing, not because you chased them, but because you embodied the cause. Faith stopped waiting and started being. Think about athletes who visualize winning. At some point, they stop asking, "Will I win?" They begin training, speaking, and living as champions. By the time they step into the arena, the victory has already happened inside. The outer is just catching up. That's the same dynamic at work in conscious creation. Deeper embodiment also dissolves fear. When you already live as the person who has it, what is there to lose? Anxiety fades because the state itself becomes unshakable. Faith no longer flinches at appearances. It knows appearances are temporary. The inner state is the root. The outer is just shifting branches. This is where manifestation becomes less about techniques and more about identity. You stop doing manifestation and start being the manifested. You wake up in the morning not wondering when it will happen, but moving through the day as if it already has. That's real faith, faith as being. And once you taste this level of embodiment, the final realization becomes clear. Faith is not waiting at all. It is active being. To assume the end now is to let the world bend to your conviction. Real faith is never about sitting quietly, waiting for something to appear. Waiting assumes separation. True faith is active. It's living, breathing, and embodying the wish fulfilled right now. Neville Goddard teachings remind us that to wait is to deny, but to assume is to create. The law of assumption works only in the present tense. I am. When you step into being, the shift is immediate. Your inner conversations change. Your self-image rises. You walk differently, speak differently, and even breathe differently. The change may seem invisible to others at first, but the world cannot resist adjusting to your conviction. Imagination creates reality, and conviction is its language. Think of someone who wants a new career. Passive waiting sounds like endless wishing and checking job boards in frustration. Active being looks like preparing clothes for the new role, studying skills, and speaking as if the transition has already happened. That subtle difference carries enormous creative power. The trap is believing you have to wait for circumstances to change before you act. But manifestation truth is the opposite. Circumstances change because you act from the end. You don't get fit and then call yourself healthy. You assume health and then your actions align. Faith moves first and reality bends. Neville often said, "Act as though it were true." This doesn't mean forcing or faking. It means choosing identity over evidence. If you desire love, stop behaving as the unloved. If you desire abundance, stop rehearsing lack. Faith doesn't demand proof. It radiates presence, and presence magnetizes everything aligned with it. When you live in the end, you no longer beg reality to shift. You declare it shifted, and life rearranges itself around you. It might take a bridge of incidents. It might surprise you with twists, but the end is certain. Real faith does not wobble. It knows. And knowing bends the outer world like heat bends metal. This active being doesn't drain energy. It gives energy. Waiting feels heavy, but being feels alive. It's the spark of spiritual awakening, when you realize you are the operant power. No more deferring your joy, your love, or your abundance. You claim it in consciousness first, and reality has no choice but to mirror it. Imagine a chessboard. Passive waiting is like staring at the pieces, hoping they'll move. Active being is placing your piece confidently, knowing the game is already won. That single move reshapes the entire board. Faith is the move that reorders your life. And here's the final paradox. The more fully you embody the end, the less effort you need. Counterproof flows naturally, not as a reward, but as a reflection. Stop waiting, because waiting is doubt. Start being, because being is creation. So as Neville taught, assume the wish fulfilled, live in the end, and let the world yield. The moment you stop waiting and start being, everything begins to align, and this is where the journey of real faith truly begins. So here's the question only you can answer. Are you still waiting for proof, or are you finally ready to live as if it's already done? Neville Goddard's teachings are clear. Faith is not about hoping, it's about being. The law of assumption doesn't respond to waiting, it responds to conviction. Look back at your life for a moment. How many times did waiting keep you stuck? And what would change if you dared, starting today, to stop waiting and start being? Real faith is not passive, it's active, alive, and magnetic. The moment you embody the end, the outer world must align. So I leave you with this. Will you keep scanning the mirror, or will you finally smile first? Because once you shift inside, reality has no choice but to reflect it. That's the secret. Faith doesn't need proof, it creates proof. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Apply it. Step into the end now. And if you're ready to keep deepening your understanding of conscious creation and imagination's power, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Together, we'll keep unfolding Neville Goddard's timeless teachings until they become your lived experience.